What preparations should the Muslims of Europe, and in particular Britain, be making in view of the collapse of banking capitalism?
Well, first of all, as things stand, we're all in the same boat, because our Muslim community have stubbornly refused to recognize the primary obligations of the deen. And in fact, if we had more readily taken on our responsibilities to hold to the deen, we would already be out of the situation and opening a path to the future. You see, over the last half century, it has been the outrageously mistaken belief among our Muslim community that somehow being a capitalist was part of nature as opposed to something imposed by man. And it's not possible to understand what's been happening if you start on the assumption that the financial transactions and the social system of today is natural, is part of the natural order of things. Because we are din al-fitra, and so if it was fitra, then we'd have to live with it. But that would mean we are saying that usury is part of fitra, and of course usury is an assault against nature. I mean, the Catholic Church in the Middle Ages defined usury as, in Latin, as contra natura. It's against nature. And the interesting thing is that as the banks head towards reduction and greater reduction of the interest rate, it's seen as part of the crisis. And the fact that Britain is, or I don't know what, down to 0.5% is like some kind of tragedy. Whereas in fact the abolition of the usury would be the elimination of the crisis. I mean, again, there's also now an idea that banking and bankers are one solid, powerful, majestic block. But as I've in great detail historically outlined in my book, The Time of the Bedouin, it has evolved, banking has evolved, and finance has evolved, and the usury practices have evolved. And so that, as it were, the earlier generation of bankers, well, as it were, not as dreadful as the current bunch, you see. The Rothschild and the Lazar brothers are another level of... they're based on being Christian gentlemen, though they're not one or the other, but they have a certain moral dignity. Now, the man who's head of Lazar before the yuppie or whatever they're called generation of adventurers got into the trading once it became 24-hour trading on the stock exchange, and the banks went into the market. Before the banks went into the market, you have another breed. And the head of Lazar was asked the other day in L'Express magazine in France how long he thought the crisis would last. And he said, well, when the money's worth nothing, then it will finish. Which is something only he could dare to say, because no politician would dare to admit it. But what he's saying is, the trick was usury. We made it work. These gangsters came along and were so greedy that they saw no limits to it, And so our pyramid scheme has been brought crashing down. Now, in all of that, as I say, we're all in the same boat. We all have our paper money and we all have our credit cards. That serves us damn well right. Let me come at it another way. Islam has been mistaught, and all the people, especially the new generation, who have no idea what Islam is, as opposed to the old generation who know perfectly well what it is and will not admit it. I'm talking about our ulama, who know what it is and will not admit it. And that is that from the fall of Sultan Abdul Hamid, Rahimullah, in Istanbul, from that minute onwards, the Muslims have been a ship without a captain. And there's no use, now we don't have the ship, there's no use screaming for the captain. Khilafah is a fard of our religion, but it's a fantasy to ask for it now. You don't put a roof till you have a house. Now, the situation is that Islam, up until the collapse of the Islamic ethos of a government that governed according to Islamic law, the situation was this. It's in the Muwatta of Imam Malik. Half of the Muwatta is ibadah, is tawheed and ibadah, how we can talk about Allah and how we have to worship Allah. The other half is commercial transactions, and the nature of an economy which has abolished usury and has moved from the holding of wealth and the only idea that you would move wealth is to invest it and re-solidify it. Whereas in the Islamic system, which is a financial system, money has to move. Money has to keep moving. And it's very clear in the Quran, but the people don't read it anymore to see how to take guidance. You see, the word in Arabic that has become the word of a state, meaning now a capitalist state with a pig like Mubarak as the president. The word for state is dawla, but dawla is the movement, it's the cyclic movement of wealth. So the society's business is to keep the wealth moving. The function of zakat is the symbolic indicator of how all transactions should be performed. That is, with one eye to the needy and the poor, and also to see that the money moves. The awqaf system is also part of that if anything is institutionalized, is embodied and fixed, it is income producing, which then moves more money. So the abolition of zakat really means that Islam has been abolished. So all these demented people, and the Arabs who live under constant accusation of our shame on them, because they have the language, they have no excuse. They have all continued to behave as if there was no zakat. They have abolished zakat. To say zakat now is like saying at the foot of the Himalayas that Everest isn't there because it's obscured by cloud. But we have obscured zakat. Until zakat is restored, there's no Islam. Zakat is not a given sadaqah. It says in the Quran, khud take. It's a taken sadaqah.